United Nations, October 3rd, IPS. On September 23rd, Israel began launching a barrage of airstrikes on Lebanon, targeting the Iran-backed militant group, Hezbollah. According to statements from the Israeli Defense Force, IDF, approximately 3,600 sites have been struck, making this the deadliest aerial campaign on Lebanon in the last 20 years. Reports from the Lebanese government indicate that the recent attacks have killed at least 1,400 people, including high-ranking Hezbollah officials Hassan Nasrallah and Nabil Kauk. In response, Hezbollah launched a series of rockets and drones into Israeli bases, with most being intercepted. As recently as October 2nd, the group launched a missile strike on an Israeli military base near Tel Aviv. The death toll is projected to rise as bombings continue with no indication of a ceasefire. Yesterday, on October 2nd, Israel launched a ground invasion on southern Lebanon's borders, deploying around 10,000 troops to move north. Hillel Kashan, a professor of political science at the American University of Beirut, adds that Israel's attacks on Lebanon are in an attempt to weaken Hezbollah's responses for a ground invasion with little opposition. Once they feel that they have softened Hezbollah's resistance sufficiently enough, they will wage their ground offensive. They are focusing on Hezbollah's strategic assets, he said. Entire residential blocks in Beirut have been decimated, forcing thousands out of their homes. The United Nations reports that approximately 900,000 people have been displaced, with 260,000 internal displacements and 100,000 displacements to Syria. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, stated that mass displacements are expected to rise in the coming days as the IDF has issued evacuation orders in 30 villages in South Lebanon between yesterday and today. Additionally, medical facilities in Lebanon struggle to assist on the front lines. The World Health Organization, WHO, indicated that over 30 primary healthcare centers in highly affected areas have been closed due to damage and insecurity. Mohammed Arkadan, an emergency responder in Lebanon, stated about a dozen apartments had collapsed onto the hillside once overlooked, burying more than 100 people. Arkadan and his team pulled over 40 bodies from the rubble, which included those of children. The attacks took a significant psychological toll on Lebanon, particularly on the front line with emergency personnel. Dr. Basil Abdullah, the medical director of Rayak Hospital in Rayak, Lebanon, explained, "Seeing children bombed, seeing elderly patients and women bombed, it's difficult. Most of the nurses and the doctors are depressed. We have emotions. We are human." Karim Baitar, a professor of international relations at St. Joseph University in Beirut, described Israel's offensive tactics as a psychological war. Humanitarian organizations fear that the increasingly indiscriminate attacks signal the wake of war. The way Israel wages war is markedly different from that of its allies in terms of frequency and intensity of strikes, said Emily Tripp, director of Air Wars, a British non-profit organization that tracks civilian casualties from international conflicts. The United States dropped 500 munitions in one day during the peak of its 2017 campaign against the Islamic State in Raqqa. Israel far exceeded this firepower, reporting strikes on 1,600 targets on September 23rd alone. Earlier this morning, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres spoke with Lebanon Prime Minister Najib Mikati, assuring that the UN is fully mobilized to provide direct humanitarian aid to affected areas. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, has provided essential supplies to over 200 shelters. WHO is providing medical workers in Lebanon with financial and technical support.